Hey everyone, and welcome to Milo Game Reviews, where we review games both new and old on all platforms. My name is Milo, and if you like the content that I make, then please subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you never miss a review when it comes out. Back in the early years of the PS4, one of the titles that looked really promising was The Order 1886. The graphics that were showcased during the first compilation reels were unbelievable, and it was promised that this game would really showcase what the PS4 had in store for us. Unfortunately, it seemed that the studio behind it, Ready at Dawn, was quite inexperienced and could not live up to the expectations, leaving the game with very mixed reviews and sale numbers back in the day. It was such a flop that a sequel was never announced, and Ready at Dawn continued on to only make smaller projects. I remember that the biggest notion that the people were arguing against the game was its short length, and that for a single player only game there was barely any replay value. Yet to me, the style and premise of the game seemed really cool, so I knew I wanted to try it whenever I had a chance. The only thing was that I did not want to pay $60 for a game that basically would only give me 4 to 5 hours of playtime. By now, the game of course is a lot cheaper, and I managed to pick it up for only 20 bucks. Let's see if the game can live up to the standard and is actually a recommendation for this budget price. The Order 1886 tells the story of Grey Galahad, who is part of the Knights of the Round Table. Whenever things get rough and the regular police cannot handle it, the Knights are sent in. It's cool to hear the reference to the Knights of the actual tale like Percival. The setting this all plays in is a Victorian London at its last years, mixed up with some steampunk. Though I have seen steampunk go wrong many times, this game in particular manages to balance it well. The steampunk can mostly be seen through the weapons, of which there are surprisingly many of, and the huge looming airships in the form of zeppelins high above the city. Galahad and his comrades are sent out to deal with the rebellion, but soon find out that they have connections to the Lycans, which are basically werewolves. Though the story is not very surprising, it does have some nice twists and turns connecting it to vampires, making it feel like your Victorian London version of Underworld, and also the legend of Jack the Ripper, a character setting that I myself am a huge fan of. Unfortunately, besides these twists, there are also turns that feel very predictable, including Galahad working for the actual bad guys, and how the rebels are not as bad as they actually seem. It all ends up with a predictable ending that is cut very short. Once the credits are rolling, you are left with a very unsatisfied feeling, as the ending is very open, and knowing we won't see a sequel only makes it more bitter. But let's take a step back and talk a bit more about the setting itself and the graphics. The game looks absolutely gorgeous. It is so beautiful, in fact, that it can easily cope with games of today. Facial features and textures are as good as any AAA game released after. But this graphical fidelity comes at a huge price, and something that absolutely boggles the mind. The entire game is in letterbox, meaning there are big black bars at the top and bottom of the screen. Not only during cutscenes, but during gameplay as well. This basically means that almost a third of the screen is only black, and makes the screen where the action takes place smaller on purpose. This is probably why they could manage to create graphics this good 4 years ago. But the fact that there's no option to turn this off is madness. What is stranger is that they have the subtitles above the letterbox, whereas one could have the subtitles be clearer on the black background of the lower bar. Besides the technical power that is on display, the world itself that is showcased is beautiful to look at too, especially during the first half, which is really when the game shines. The bustling city of London feels incredibly alive as zeppelins fly over and smoke fills the sky from the many factories everywhere. Incredible detail has gone in the environment, with beautiful paintings and furniture fitting for the Victorian era, but also other details like shopping goods or clothing that can be seen through the windows look detailed and varied. As you walk through the streets, you see many different citizens, and each of them have dialogue that goes on for quite a long time. You can really see that a lot of time and money was spent on these smaller details that someone like me appreciates. During shootouts, the environment is also quite destructible, with many things exploding, breaking, or falling over. Battles can feel really hectic and fun because of this. I was even surprised to find out that you could decapitate enemies or shoot off their limbs with something heavy like a shotgun. Where it all takes a downfall is once Galahad makes the predictable decision to trust one of the rebels
and join her for a secret mission to uncover what the Order is up to. Sprawling cities filled with life, yet replaced with abandoned, shambled dockyards and factories of which we have seen so many. The game never recovers after this, as you work in secret, and the game loses its sense of scope completely. It might be a case of the studio running out of budget, as numerous areas get even reused, including the environment at the very finale. Gameplay-wise, it is very reminiscent of Gears of War. A bit too much, if you ask me. It is very clear that this franchise was supposed to be the equivalent of Gears of War or a cover shooter for the PS4, but it lacked many things that made Gears of War good. The biggest difference is that the shooting mechanics in the game simply don't feel as solid. The guns don't feel as powerful or meaty, and the types of enemies you are fighting are not varied at all. The times you do get to face others, like the Lycans, are very boring and repetitive, as they just come running at you while you shoot at them before pressing X to evade them. The only good thing regarding the shooting is, as mentioned before,
that I was surprised to find out that there were actually quite a lot of weapons available. From many different pistols to rifles to different shotguns or flaming weapons to even grenade launchers. But the shooting scenarios are often not varied as well, with the same type of arenas with the waist-high cover one can hide behind. Though the story kept me going, the gameplay wore me down, which is weird, as simple things like cliché turret sections or segments on rails would have made it a little bit better, though not much. Towards the ending of the game is also a stealth segment that forces you to kill every single guard in order to find a key. This section feels like an excuse to lengthen the game. Overall though, it took me over 6 hours to complete the game, but I made sure to soak up the environment bit by bit during the first half. I looked at all the small details in the buildings and listened in on the conversations of the people. This was mostly because I love the Victorian London setting so much, and it's quite rare that we get a game that nails this setting like The Order does. I can easily see though, that one can indeed complete the game in under 5 hours if one were to ignore all this. There's little to excuse replay. Some of the extras that can be found here and there are sound files, but in order to listen to them, one has to go to the menu and select it to listen to it while staying on the menu. The fact that you cannot listen to them while walking through the world is another decision that boggles the mind. Part of the hours that I played, a good portion, I was only watching cutscenes. This was another huge gripe many reviewers had with the game, I remember. I personally am a big fan of cinematics if they are done well, like in Metal Gear Solid. I don't even care if they are very long. And thus the cinematics did not bother me here. What did bother me though, and what felt like a really weird gameplay decision, was that sometimes you are watching a lengthy cutscene, then get control for 2 seconds where you need to literally press one button and then another cutscene starts that takes another long time. Why bother with the small gameplay prompt? And no, I'm not talking about a prompt within the cutscene itself, which also happens quite frequently in the form of QuickTime events. In the end, it was such a shame, because during the first 2 to 3 hours, I was really impressed with the game, and could not understand all the critique that the game got despite the obvious things like letterbox and lengthy cutscenes. The story and world were gripping at first, the sound design and voice acting was superb, and the graphics were unreal. But like I said, it takes a turn for the worst during the second half, with predictable twists and boring environments. It is also here where the fights become more frequent and repetitive, resulting in me getting annoyed at certain sections and just wanted to get this over with. In the beginning, I was really thinking about giving it somewhere around an 8, after having played only the first half. But having now seen the full picture, the bitterness of the horrible ending, and pale environments and gameplay compared to the first half, I cannot help but give this game a 7.2. A number that I think is still a bit higher than most reviewers gave it. But that is because the setting of Victorian London and the graphics really save a lot for me. Gameplay wise, it is not bad, but it is simply mediocre, with not a lot of interesting things to do for most people. To end on a positive note though, is that I can heartily recommend it for the price of $20 or less. Anything more than that though, is too much. The Victorian London setting might not be as easy to swallow for some as the bulking steroid bros of Gears of War, but for me personally, it worked out really well. Thank you all so much for watching another review, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video and channel with your friends.